Someone You Should Know. A program about people you know and even more that you don't. Hosted by Stuart Sax, veteran, husband, father, and grandfather. Now, here's your host, Stuart Sax.
Well, welcome to another episode of Someone You Should Know. Very glad to have you with us today. And according to history, today is February 12th. That is Abraham Lincoln's birthday. So, and it's kind of interesting because that might have a little bit of something to do with the show that we're having today, because today it's all about veterans. And you're going to learn a lot. I'm going to tell you right at the outset, if you are a veteran, if you have a veteran in your family, if you have a neighbor who's a veteran or whatever, have a pad of paper and a pencil handy, because my guest today is going to be throwing out a lot of information, and we want you to be well informed because this has to do with veterans benefits. And we are brought to you today by our very, very good friends at Ease Veterans Magazine. Christine Walker is the publisher and owner and force behind Double Dot Publishing, that publishes the most extensive magazine in America that is written by veterans, for veterans, about veterans, and passionate patriots love to read our publication also. I'm on the staff. I am a writer for the magazine. I am so thrilled to be working with Christine Walker. If you have not seen Addie's Veterans Magazine yet, check it out online, and then I urge you to get a subscription. It's a fine, fine publication. Well, we're talking about veterans, and so for those that may not know what a VSO is, that is a Veteran Service Officer. And I have got a young lady that has dedicated her almost her entire career to helping other veterans understand the benefits that they're entitled to and helping them to get them. So Jane Babcock, welcome. I am so thrilled to have you on Someone You Should Know.
Thank you, Stuart. I'm glad to be here.
You're joining us all the way from Manitowoc, Wisconsin.
Yes. Yeah, we got above freezing today, 33.
Well, that's like a heat storm in Wisconsin in February, isn't it?
Yep. People were running around with their coats unzipped. So.
Well, first off, I have to thank you very, very much for your service to our country. You are an Army veteran, and I understand you are third generation of veterans, and you can even trace it further back in your lineage. But what I guess my first question to you would be, what possessed you to decide to go into the Army? And this is back in the 80s you served.
Yes.
You know, what was the draw for the Army to you at the time?
For me, it was an apprenticeship program, is the way I looked at it. I was 23, finally ready to go to school, and had an idea of what I wanted to do. And I said, but I don't have any money. So I thought, I can go in the Army for a year of electronics training, work for them for 3 years, and come out with the experience. And that's what I started out doing.
Yeah, and not only that, but also the GI Bill, so that if you wanted to pursue further education, you had the GI Bill. And I think for those of us that served in the military, and I'm an Army veteran myself, to us, that GI Bill really became the foundation for a lot of college-aged fellows and girls at the time to say, instead of putting the burden on my parents to pay for my college education, I can get some help from the government. Yeah. And so, and we had to learn how to reach out to the government. Now, fast forward to today, and there still are benefits available to veterans, but is it fair to say that most veterans do not know about them and they don't take advantage of them?
Well, I think mostly veterans, of course, know VA as healthcare. They know compensation for injuries. They don't know the laundry list of presumptives depending on when and where they served. You know, the Agent Orange guys had 38 cancers. And Agent Orange wasn't just in Vietnam, it was in Thailand, it was on part of the demilitarized zone of Korea. There's several sites. In fact, there's still 12 sites here in the US where they tested or stored it that they're trying to get onto that list. But you
Really?
introduce something in the government and it takes 5 years of legislative BS to get it there. So, but
And you know, and so you were more in a technical end of a service when you were on active duty, but when you left the military, is that when you became a VSO?
well, I originally started out active duty, got off of active duty because I had extended 6 months trying to get an assignment that I wanted. I wanted to go back to Korea to go shopping, and they didn't come back with the assignment I wanted, so I got out. But I landed a terrific job working for an underwater acoustical research agency out of Washington because they had never had a maintenance tech. So I got hired by the boss, and he hadn't even told the HR people. I showed up the first day, and they were like, "Who are you, and why are you here?" And
Wait a minute, you said you were an underwater technical, explain that to
yeah. Well, I was the tech person. They had a skiff with all this test equipment. They were developing an underwater. Well, the excuse we used is that we were mapping the ocean floor.
okay,
Sometimes these big fish-shaped metal objects got in the way,
which
but
sometimes that's what you were looking for.
sometimes.
Yeah.
But I was the first maintenance tech they'd had on site. They always used to send their equipment away and they'd wait weeks, if not months, to get it back. Instead, I could take the equipment like a 28 channel recorder and I could tweak it overnight. I could make sure it met all the specs so they'd have it back the next day. So
So, uh, after the service, did you continue in that career?
pretty much, I most of my work was electronic technical, except for when I kept getting activated for. I joined the reserves and I got activated 3 more times, and I did a recruiting tour in between there. So I ended up with 4D214s. And then I got injured on a stupid training accident before we were headed back to Afghan or going over to Afghanistan. And so they said, "Oh, aren't you lucky you got 21 and a half? Sign here, you're in the retired reserves." No mention of VA, no mention of medical board. So I missed out on immediate retirement pay and immediate TRICARE. I had to wait till I was almost 60 to get those things. And so when I did become a CVSO, I went, "Oh, I can go to VA."
And for those that are watching and listening to this show, and that was what I alluded to at the beginning, folks, is that if you served in the military, and I'm gonna throw myself under the bus in this show because I'm gonna be Jane's basically Jane's guinea pig. I served in Vietnam. When we served, we didn't know anything about Agent Orange. We knew that they were using defoliants, but we didn't know that they were or how toxic they were. It was many years later. I never filed for benefits until, are you ready for this? I'm almost ashamed to say it, until last year. Uh, One of the things was my feeling was there were a lot of guys that had it a heck of a lot worse than me. I would, you know, but as time goes on, these things that are in your system, just like a cancer can be a very small thing, but once it starts to grow, it can magnify itself. And I didn't realize until the PACT Act was revealed that those toxins were doing a little more harm to my body than I was aware of. And so I decided to number one, you have to apply to get the benefits. and you wait and you wait, and I got a reply back saying there was a glitch with the form that I filled out and they needed to review it. And I went back and forth and back and forth, and a few times along my travels, I said, to hell with it. I'm not going to bother with it. Then someone told me about a VSO. I said, oh, who? And that's a veteran service officer. And they said, you need somebody who is schooled in all of this and can guide you through the process. That's what Jane is, and she has been doing it. So, folks, if you're having trouble getting the benefits that you feel you're entitled to, and there are probably more benefits that veterans are entitled to than they're even aware of, you need somebody like Jane Babcock. And we will be scrolling her LinkedIn site, which has got a wealth of information, but you can reach and find out more information from Jane. And no matter where you live in the country, Jane can take care of you. Even though she's in Wisconsin, you got issues, you got questions, you reach out to her.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna throw a big ball at you.
Okay.
And that is my first real question is, what are maybe the top 3 or 4 things that veterans do not know or are not aware of with regards to the benefits that they are entitled to?
Wow, that is such a big painting. Okay, when it comes to compensation, basically the VA looks at any injury or illness caused by or aggravated by service. My knee originally was injured in junior high, but I didn't enter service till 23. They checked it out extra special and they said, oh, good to go. So I am rated for that knee because I did end up having knee surgery on recruiting tour and then again afterwards. And so I am service connected. So any injury or illness caused by or aggravated by military service that's a detractor from employment
Mm-hmm.
or quality of life and has a current diagnosis. I don't know how many guys walked into my office and said, my wife says I have to file for PTSD because I'm a grumpy old son of a gun. But have you been diagnosed?
Right.
So we can file the initial claim, but you have to wait and get that diagnosis. Go to counseling for a while, then get to the head doctor where he could say, yes, child, you do have depression, anxiety, or you have PTSD, or God forbid, you're bipolar or something, and your symptoms started in service, and we can show that. Now, the other thing is okay, what do you do in the military? You get injured, you twist a knee, you sprain an ankle, whatever. They give you Motrin and ice pack. So after 1 or 2 times of that, you just stop doing it. You stop going on sick call, and you
Right.
just bump. You buy the Motrin, you grab the ice pack from the dining hall. So some guys won't have actual treatment in service, and they think, well, I can't prove it. But if somebody witnessed you jumping off the deuce and a half and twisting your ankle, and 2 days later it was purple and your roommate saw that, those witness statements are just good. So evidence is a big problem. Most guys don't realize there's so many ways of gaining evidence. The CQ log showing that you were taken over to the civilian emergency room. The spouse that was married to you most of your military career. And yeah, when you first got married, you didn't snore, you didn't stop breathing. But after the first 5 years of marriage, you sounded like a Mack truck and she would have to elbow you to get you to breathe again in the night. All the symptoms of sleep apnea. So when it comes to compensation, there's so much more that can be done to get a claim. The other thing is pension. In almost 12 years, as a CVSO, accredited county veteran service officer, I had one guy that said yes when I asked, have you ever heard of pension? And he said, yeah, I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is. I don't know how it works. Every person that served during wartime, even if it was just one day, you happened to be getting out the day after it started, or you joined the day before it ended, and you've served federal active duty during that period of time, there's a income program meant to keep you out of poverty. Now, generally speaking, it's going to apply to mostly to our over 65 veterans
Mhm.
or their widows, no matter how old they are, or if the veteran is under 65, but they become disabled after service. I had a young man badly injured in a motorcycle accident after his service, and he got $850 a month from SSI because he didn't have enough work history to get Social Security disability. So through the pension program, we got him another 950 in income. Now this was well over 10 years ago. So all that has progressed just like Social Security does.
And this is the point that we're trying to make, and the reason that I asked Jane to join me in this discussion is because for most veterans, the process that you have to go through, or what we call the hoops, sometimes are so challenging that we just say, to hell with it. I'm not going to bother because I'm not going to get those benefits. But when you got somebody that steps up to the plate and has a heavy bat, all of a sudden you realize that, man, those are my benefits and I should be getting those. And am I
Mhm.
correct that even though uh, you had something that was service connected, you were injured when you were in the service, and you can show it, you can prove it. There are cases where you can get pay retroactive.
Yes.
You even get some back pay, even though you file today. If they go back and find out when some of those symptoms started and everything, you can't collect benefits for that. Am I correct?
Yes and no.
I know it's a little limited, but
There's really three circumstances. If you've gotten out of service and you file your intent the day before day 364, that's considered to be within the first year, so they will go back to your departure from service.
okay.
Now, if you're Agent Orange Vietnam and say you filed for ischemic heart disease when you were 52 and had a heart attack, but it didn't go on the presumptive list until a couple years later, there is a guy named Niemer that actually sued the federal government. And he went to the Supreme Court, he won, and it basically made it so that Agent Orange exposed veterans will receive back pay to their initial claim for anything that later goes onto the presumptive list. One of my guys had his first heart attack in his late 20s, then again in his 30s, then two more in his 50s, and had to stop working. Well, then ischemic heart disease went on the list, so they charted out his health and progression throughout the disease, and they paid him $480,000 in back pay. But that's because of Niemer. That also means that maybe the veteran filed for it, then died, but the VA would have owed him money. And when they add new things to Agent Orange, they go back through and check all the files and they say, oh, we owe this guy $9,000. They're supposed to reach out to the widow. They're supposed to reach out to the children if the widow is gone. But if they don't know those children are alive, if they don't know that he even had children, they'll never reach out to him. So if you're the child of a Agent Orange exposed, whether it was Thailand, whether it was the DMZ of Korea during certain parts and certain times, if you were 12 nautical miles out, what they call blue water, you should find out whether or not your veteran's ship is on the list. And even if the ship is not on the list, that doesn't mean you can't prove it. I just assisted a widow whose veteran was on one ship. He was stationed on this ship, but he had been taken to another medical ship that was inside the zone for 36 hours of IV respiratory antibiotic stuff. So he
And
was
he's
in the
got a
12
record.
miles.
Yeah.
Yes, but they didn't have a record. He didn't really technically have a record, and he had filed when it was not blue water allowed. So I actually had the authority as his claim agent to go through his file. And I saw the one sick call slip that named that other ship. So there was the evidence. And because if that had been anybody other than an Agent Orange guy, then I would have been able to claim what they call Q. That's the other one where you'll get back pay. I entered service in 82, had some new issues after in AIT and stuff like this. If I had filed and the VA had my service treatment record showing that I had been treated, but they denied me the condition, and years later I decided to fight for it, a good CVSO would look through the medical record and go, oh, wait a minute, you had the evidence all along, VA. You didn't follow your rules. So under the clear and unmistakable error rule, they would have owed me back pay. That's the third time. That's the third way a person can get back pay. So don't discount that if you are not an Agent Orange person. You still might be able to get back pay based on their making a mistake the first time.
You made mention of spouses. If a veteran, like myself, I was just rated for compensation and all. I noticed that in some of the information that I received, it did not have any information regarding spouses. That did use the word dependent. Is a spouse considered a dependent?
Yes. A child that becomes disabled before their 18th birthday can remain as a dependent throughout their entire life. Because if they're not able to provide themselves substantial income enough, be gainfully employed, be able to live on their own and things, they can be considered a dependent when they're 42 years old. So, yeah, and I've run into veterans. One of my guys had a handicapped daughter, and she was probably in her 30s. And I was like, well, she's on your claim for dependency, right? So she's got CHAMP VA. And he was like, no. So we had to go through the process of getting her put back on.
So even if a veteran is compensated and receives their rating and all, they can go back. Is there a time limit or something when they need to go back to say, oh, wait a minute, I don't have any provisions here for my wife?
Okay, yes. And a good VSO, if you're married and have children, they'll send those documents in. Whether you're rated 0%, your hearing loss is so minor that it's not impacting the quality of your life, but there is damage from service, those records should be submitted. That way, when you do get a rating of 30% and are now eligible for dependent pay, they'll already have those records. You just verify that you're still married, that your children are still dependents. Your stepchildren, if you're doing anything to financially assist them, that's dependency.
Now, is there an age limit for those dependents?
18 unless they're continuing in school. And
Okay.
if you're lucky or unlucky enough to be rated 100% or individually unemployable, they have the GI Bill. They have their own GI Bill to use. And so they could still be receiving dependent pay plus full education.
The bottom line to this conversation, folks, is that you need someone like Jane Babcock because unless you are very, very astute in all of this, red tape and paperwork and everything, it's like swimming through uncharted waters. To have someone like Jane that can go to bat for you and file the forms that you need. For instance, I after my forms were filed, I was sent for the consultations. One was audio, and like you said, it wasn't so bad that it was rated. But I'm a prostate cancer survivor. Well, I mean, I had no idea all of those years that my PSA was going up, that it may have been related to Agent Orange or my service in Vietnam. My VSO told me, yeah, it is. And that helped with my rating. I also have been, and my wife would attest to it, an irritable person from time to time. And Over the years, that has sometimes gotten a little bit worse. Not violent, just irritable. Things like uh, if I hear a helicopter a mile or two away from my house, I react to it. I know because I remember. If one of us should drop something on the floor, a spoon, a fork, or something, I will jump and I react to it. We just happen to be watching a series on TV, and I am deathly afraid of snakes. And all of a sudden, there was this surprise, shot in the movie where all of a sudden they revealed a rattlesnake that, I mean, just came at the camera. I told my wife, I'm not going to sleep well tonight because I've got that in my brain. The long and short of it was that I received a rating for PTSD. I knew I had a short fuse. I knew that sometimes I could be irritable, but that has grown over the years. And I will also say, and you can probably back me up, when I went for my meeting with the VSO, my wife had written a letter stating what the events were over the last, we've been married 50 years, and how she has seen a change in my personality. And that ended up, I think, having a lot to do with my rating.
Yes, yes.
And also,
Yeah, those
you know,
witnesses that see your life and how things are impacting you. You know, you said you're not rated for your hearing, but I bet you got a 0% rating. That means the VA is saying, we know that your military service damaged you. It's just the damage right now is so minor. But
right,
when later on, when it gets worse, you can ask for it to be reevaluated.
right.
And it used to be to get hearing aids, you had to have a rating, but the VA is no longer that way. So if you're in the VA and you're not rated for hearing loss, you could still request an exam to get hearing aids or glasses.
Okay.
So don't used to be you couldn't be getting those things unless it was service connected, but that's not true anymore. And a
And
lot of the veteran organizations are pushing to get dental care opened up to more veterans. Because right
and
now
you
you either have to have something service related or be 100% or individually unemployable. We're trying to
okay.
open that up to our older, because a lot of veterans can't take in proper nutrition because of their bad teeth. If it's impacting your health, your doctor can actually push to get you at least minimum dental care to get the infection out of your mouth or whatever is going on. So,
And the disability ratings and compensation that you get for your service connected injuries is separate from the benefits that you can get from the VA just for being a veteran. So it isn't a one or the other, it is both. But it's a good idea, am I correct, to file for your compensation ratings and benefits and all, and then start to go through the VA system for some of the medical care that you want, for the muscle stuff, and eyes, ears, nose, all that stuff.
yep. Get into the VA healthcare because VA doctors are going to look for, in your case, your Agent Orange guys, they're going to look for those 38 cancers and a dozen neurological diseases. Parkinson's is horrendously frequent amongst you guys. Your prostate cancer is really bizarre in that 5, 10 years from now, your PSA might start climbing again. You don't
Yeah,
have a prostate, but your PSA climbs, and then they find cancer somewhere else, maybe a
right.
lung, maybe your spine or whatever. And when they biopsy, it's prostate cancer. So when you're in active cancer, you're automatically 100%. So you go through all your treatment and then you get a year of being clear. Then they'll reduce it based on, okay, what are your side effects? Do you have, in this case, prostate cancer, urinary leakage, erectile dysfunction? That can be, if it wasn't happening before you had the surgery and now it is, guess what? It was caused by your surgery for your
It
service
was
dog.
related. Yeah.
So And that's not a quote rateable issue. They can't determine to what degree. So they
Okay.
just call it a special monthly compensation, and it's like 200 and some dollars a month added on top of your claim. But yes, you need to file these claims, especially because, God forbid, they cause or they contribute to your passing. Your spouse will already be set up to just file for her dependent claim. Okay. If she's got to go through the whole process of proving that something was service connected that caused your or contributed to your death, that's going to take a lot more work on her part and a lot more stress and a lot more time at the worst point in her life.
Okay.
And children, say you get divorced and you still have dependent children, those children can be entitled to some of these benefits, even if the spouse isn't, because she's no longer married to you.
Now, is it the VSO that can assist you in finding out if, in fact, your dependents are eligible for that?
Oh, yes. Your VSO goes to training every year. When I was a CVSO, I'm no longer a VSO only because I'm no longer employed. A VSO must be employed at least 1,000 hours a year, so
Okay.
part-time. And they learn all the state and federal benefits. They go to training every year. In the first year, they have to take a test. They have to get background check. They have to get different organizations to, look at them and say, yeah, this person can represent claims in our name. So if a guy came in and said, I want to file a claim, I said, are you a member of the VFW, the Vietnam Veterans of America, or one of the organizations I was already approved by? And if so, I filed it there. If not, then I would say, okay, well, let's file it through the state VSO office. So it kind of spread the work out a little bit, because in the old days when it was all paper, I would send the paper to them. They would look it over and say, yep, everything's good in this claim. It should go through the first time. And they would literally walk across the hall to the VA and make the VA sign. You have this form, that form, this many pages of medical records from Aurora Hospital, this from me, from Holy Family. And that way the VA couldn't say, oh, we never got that. Oh, yes, you did. You signed for it.
Okay.
So nowadays, much easier. They do everything on the computer. They scan in your documents, and it's gone electronically.
Now, I know that some of the service organizations, so you mentioned VFW, the American Legion, most of those have a VSO officer, a VSO. But beyond those VSOs that are in the service organizations, where does someone also find a veteran service officer? You mentioned something about the state. Are there government VSOs? Are there private VSOs? Are there some that, because they work for the government, there is absolutely no cost? Are there others that you have to pay for their services? Is this a broad group?
Yes, there are 32 states that mandate that every county, parish employ veteran service officers, accredited veteran service officers. The
Okay.
VA calls them VSO reps. Okay. They we had to sign an ethics statement saying we will not charge for our services. So county veteran service officers, state veteran service officers, tribal veteran service officers,
Hmm.
they are free. The VSOs that work for the American Legion, the DAV, and others, there's a difference. They have in their post or chapter positions, there's always somebody who's trained in benefits, and their unofficial title is VSO, but they're not accredited, so they can't file claims. They
They
can't
just
go into the VA and look
they
at
just
the
tell you
computer.
what form you have to fill out and
Yeah.
send in.
And they guide you to that local accredited one, whether it's
Right.
your county, state. Now, there are also accredited claims agents, and some of them are former VSOs. Some of them have just veterans that filed their own claim, so then they were so interested in the process that they went through the training. They can charge, and some charge a flat fee, maybe $5,000. And if they're
Uh,
charging you $5,000 to file a presumptive, which shouldn't take more than 2 hours worth of paperwork, come on, that's not fair. That's not right.
right.
So the claim agents can file. They can file it. They can look inside the computer system and everything, but they charge. They're either going to do a flat fee or they're going to say, oh, I know this claim is going to take a year and I'm going to take 20% of your back pay. Or now,
I've heard that.
yep. Now the next step up are the VA lawyers. And yes, there are some, as in any group, there's some bad apples. But if your claim has already gone through an initial claim, it's gone through an appeal maybe 2 or 3 times, and now you're up at the Board of Veteran Appeals, you may well need a VA lawyer, and a good one, and one that's going to charge you a minimal amount of money, but yet they're going to have expenses. They're going to fly to Washington, D.C. and get in front of the board and in front of the judges and do things like that. So yes, they have to charge too. But if you got a real good VSO, they should be able to figure out the evidence needed, and you should be able to produce that evidence. After all, if you can't produce the evidence, then odds are that, and be it ever so terrible, there's some veterans out there that take extreme advantage of the system. But I helped a Korean War veteran who was shot in Korea, put in a field hospital. A bunch of Marines came in and saved him after the field hospital had been overrun and they'd been in the frozen rubble for a day and a half. And I found one of those Marines. So if I could do that, you can find the guy you served with.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you did this for many, many, many years, but now that you are retired, you have continued to do this kind of work. How are you able to do that? And can anybody that's watching and listening to this show reach out to you and still get the same service that they would by somebody who, was still a certified VSO?
Yes. I can't file your claim, but I can give you all the guidance. I can tell you all the regulations, what kind of evidence you need to submit. I may be able to help you find that evidence or what's the easiest way to get that evidence. If you go into certain offices and maybe the VSO is kind of on the lazy side, or he's so overwhelmed with work, he's going to say, oh, fill out this form, we'll send it to the National Archive. In a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, you'll get your DD-214 that you lost in that fire. But as a CVSO who knows the regulations, oh, where did you enter service? Oh, you lived in the county of La Crosse in Wisconsin? I'm going to call the county. If they don't have it, I'm going to call the state, because odds are when you got out of service, a copy was sent to your home of record.
Right.
And as an accredited VSO, they could scan it to me and I could stamp it that it was a true copy of an original document as maintained by a custodial authority. And I could literally have it sometimes in hours. Why wait a month?
I was one of those people when I got out of the back from Vietnam. My records were sent to St. Louis. And way back, I guess it was in the late 70s or 80s and all, there was a fire that destroyed a lot of records in St. Louis. And I assume, fortunately, they were able to track my original DD-214 through my like you said, your home of record, which was in Northwest Indiana. And they had it was available and they could verify it. It is a tough situation, and it's something that veterans need to be aware of, because we're losing too many veterans every day. I don't know, somewhere I read that almost 1,000 veterans are passing away, and there are just still hundreds of thousands of veterans that are not receiving the compensation that they are rightly entitled to. And that is why I'm so happy that you took the time to be with me. Go into Jane's LinkedIn site. It's on the screen. Jot it down. When the show is over, if you want to go back and replay the show in order to get more information and all, please do so. And share this program with your friends and people that you know, because if there was a veteran in your family and they are not receiving the compensation that they are entitled to, it's never too late. Am I correct?
No, it's never too late. People say, oh, well, the Camp Lejeune had a time limit. No, it didn't, because what if you're not one of the people that got the cancer last year? That
Right.
time limit was a federal lawsuit that has nothing to do with the VA. So if 10 years from now you get diagnosed with one of those toxic water things from Camp Lejeune, you can file your claim. If you
Or
had cancer, but you've recovered from that cancer, and now you find out it was on the presumptive list, you can file for it, even though it's, quote, gone from your body. Odds are you have residuals from it. Whether it's compromised to your immune system, whether it's, the radiation chemotherapy shut down your kidneys, whatever. It's still out there for you as an option, but the sooner you do it, the better, because after all, none of us get to know the day we're leaving here. So
right.
if you don't get it done now, you might be making it harder on your family for later.
And you may be leaving sooner than you thought.
Right.
And
ALS.
for those, and veterans, for those of you who are going to the VA clinics and all, and you're getting your medications and you're getting your checkups and everything, that doesn't, necessarily, that has nothing to do with the compensation that you may be due for disability. You make sure that is part of your program too.
Yep. You can go to the VA healthcare for your entire life, but those guys are so busy concentrating on keeping you alive, keeping you
Right.
healthy. They're not trained on the list of presumptives because some of those lists are extremely long. So that's where your VSO comes in. That's where knowing what the presumptive list is. ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. For every three people
Parkinson's,
that
you
gets,
mentioned.
yeah, but ALS, for every three people that get it, two are usually veterans. And
Really?
because of that, the VA doesn't fight. So if you know a veteran that is suffering with ALS, whether he served during peacetime, wartime, Kentucky, Germany, wherever, he is eligible for health care, and he's probably going to be rated 100% the very first day, because
Wow.
ALS is going to kill you within a year, or it's going to take 10 really miserable years. And that surviving spouse, if they left a spouse or dependent children behind, they're entitled to dependent indemnity compensation. So when ALS first got on the list, I started running ads in the newspaper. Widows were coming in. Oh, my spouse died 4 years ago. I never knew about this. Well, why would they know? They're not going to pay attention to VA stuff after the veteran's deceased. I can't do anything about the 4 years before, but we're going to send that intent in today. And from today forward, you're going to get your DIC and your CHAMP VA and access to the VA home loan. And if you want to go to college, you're going to get education benefits, Chapter 35 from the VA. There's so much that goes along. Right now, less than 600,000 widows are receiving benefits, but it's estimated that 2 million are eligible. Whether it's because their veteran died years ago from something that just got put on a list,
Right.
or something they never related to service. MS, multiple sclerosis. If you get diagnosed within the first 7 years of leaving service, because it takes so long for those symptoms to become apparent to the point where they can diagnose you, they know that you've had it for 7 years. So if you get diagnosed in those first 7 years, the VA just says, okay, it's our fault.
It's a process, and to have someone like Jane going, helping you, with your applications. And is it fair to say that if I have a VSO that I've been working with here in Texas, but I have additional questions, I can reach out to you in Wisconsin, and someone can have more than one VSO that's working to answer the questions that you might have?
Oh, yeah. I'm just providing you guidance on the regulations. I'm
Okay,
I can provide you with the entire presumptive list, which they just added 4 new conditions for our PAC Act guys.
right.
Cancers of the urinary tract. So, I mean, the kidneys, the ureter, all that stuff. Those just got literally put on last week. So if
And
that
the
veteran
average,
died 3 years ago of it, that
yeah,
surviving spouse or children are entitled to benefit.
yeah, the average veteran wouldn't be aware of that because he's not studying it on a regular basis. Jane, thank you very, very much for taking the time to be with me and to share your vast knowledge on the subject with the people that follow this show. I greatly appreciate
Anytime I can talk to the family,
it.
I'm
And
here.
again, reach out through her LinkedIn page and everything. You can get the answers to your questions. I always end my show with Oscar Wilde is saying, "Be yourself because everyone else is already taken." And Jane,
That's
I
great.
think that you are one in a million, and you have been doing this for a long time. I applaud you for all the service that you've given to the country, and especially all the service that you have given to our veterans.
Just helping the family.
Well, thank you very much, and it's great to be a part of your team. So go out and make it a great day. That'll do it for another edition of Someone You Should Know. And again, a big, big thank you to Jane Babcock.
Someone you should know.